I locked the doors the second I heard it step out of the trees. I didn't see it at first, just the sound. Slow, measured, like it wasn't in any kind of hurry. Gravel shifting under weight. Then nothing. Then another step, closer this time. I turned off the engine, killed the headlights, sat there in the dark, trying to listen past my own breathing. That's when it started moving around the truck. Not fast, not clumsy either, just circling. I could hear it near the back tire, then along the side, then right outside my window. Close enough that I thought if I looked, I'd be face to face with it. I didn't look. Something brushed against the door. Light. Careful. Like it was feeling the shape of it. Learning it. Then, one knock. Not loud, not urgent. Just a single, deliberate tap on the glass. I held my breath. It didn't knock again. For a few seconds, there was nothing. No footsteps, no movement. Just the kind of silence that makes you feel like you're being watched from somewhere you can't see. Then it spoke. "You weren't supposed to stay." The voice was wrong. Not distorted, not deep or growling, just wrong in a way I couldn't explain. Like it had learned how to sound human, but didn't fully understand how to use it. I didn't answer. I didn't move. I just sat there, gripping the wheel, staring straight ahead, trying to convince myself that if I stayed quiet long enough, it would leave. Then it said my name. Clear, calm, right outside the window. And I swear to you, I never told anyone I was coming out here. I want you to pause for a second. Imagine you're standing here in the forest, the trees closing in, the air completely still. If you heard a knock right now, would you answer it? Or stay silent like the rules say? Comment below what you would do, and be honest. Would you survive the night, or would the forest take you too? And if you're watching this far, you're clearly brave enough to handle more stories like this. Hit that like button and subscribe, because the next one might be even closer than you think. I wish I could tell you that was the first strange thing that happened out there. It wasn't. By the time I heard that knock, I had already been warned, more than once, not to stay after dark. I just didn't take it seriously. A few days earlier, I'd been driving through a stretch of road deep in the Appalachian Mountains. No major highways, no traffic, just long, empty turns and small towns that looked like they hadn't changed in decades. I stopped at a gas station about 30 minutes before the last paved road gave out. It was the kind of place you don't really notice unless you need something. One pump working, old sign. Lights flickering even though it was still daytime. I went inside, grabbed a drink, and asked the guy behind the counter if he knew anything about an old access road a few miles up. The moment I mentioned it, he looked at me a little differently. Didn't say anything at first, just stood there, like he was deciding whether or not to answer. Then he asked me one question. Why? I told him the truth. I film remote locations, abandoned places, stories people don't usually talk about. He didn't react to that. He just leaned on the counter and said, real quietly, "Then don't stay there after dark." That was it. No explanation, no story, just that one sentence. I laughed it off, thought maybe he was trying to mess with me, or scare off another outsider. But then I noticed something. There was a map on the wall behind him. Old, faded, probably hadn't been replaced in years. And right where that road should have been, there was nothing. like that part of the land had been erased. I pointed at it, asked him why it wasn't marked. He didn't even look back, just said, "Some places don't need to be." I should have left it alone right there, but I didn't. I paid for my drink, got back in the truck, and kept driving. About 10 minutes later, I passed the last house. Another 5, and the road turned to gravel. And just before the trees started closing in on both sides, I saw a sign. It wasn't official. No state markings, no warnings you'd expect. Just a piece of wood nailed to a post. Handwritten, faded but still readable. 3 words. Don't stay late. I remember sitting there for a second, engine running, staring at it. Not scared, just confused. Because by that point, it wasn't just one person saying it anymore. It was starting to feel like a rule. And I had just decided I wasn't going to follow it. I didn't go straight in after that. I turned the truck around, drove back the way I came. Not because I was scared, at least that's what I told myself, but because something about that sign didn't sit right with me. It felt placed, like it wasn't there to keep people out. It was there for the ones who ignored it. I drove back to the gas station. Same guy behind the counter, same quiet place. Nothing had changed, but the way he looked at me this time, it was different. Like he already knew I'd seen it. I didn't waste time. I asked him straight up, "What happens if you stay?" He didn't answer right away. He glanced past me, toward the windows, even though there was nothing out there but empty road. Then he said something I didn't expect. "You hear knocking?" I paused, told him, "Yeah. Sometimes when I'm out filming, you hear things. Animals, branches, old buildings settling." He shook his head. "Not like that." That was the first time I felt it. Not fear, just the sense that I was missing something important. I asked him what he meant. He leaned in a little, lowered his voice. "If you hear knocking out there, don't answer it." I almost asked what that even meant, but before I could, the door behind me opened. An older man walked in. Didn't say anything at first, just nodded at the guy behind the counter. Then he looked at me. Not in a curious way, more like he recognized why I was there. I asked him if he knew the area. He let out a short breath, like he'd been asked that before. "Used to." I told him I was heading out there to film. There was a long pause. Then he said, "Film all you want. Just don't stay when it gets dark." Same warning, different person. That's when I pushed a little harder. I asked him why. What actually happens out there? He didn't give me a story. Didn't talk about anything chasing people or things in the woods. He just said, "People who stay don't always come back the way they left." That stuck with me. Not missing, not gone, just different. Before I could ask anything else, he turned away and walked toward the back of the store. And that should have been enough. 2 people, same warning, no details, but the same exact line drawn in the sand. Leave before dark. But instead of backing off, I started getting more interested. Because now it didn't feel like a random story anymore. It felt like something people had agreed not to explain. I left the station again, but this time I didn't stop anywhere else. No more questions, no more detours. Just that road, stretching out ahead of me. And the closer I got to it, the quieter everything became. No cars, no houses, no signs of anyone. Just trees. And that same thought stuck in my head the entire drive. They weren't trying to scare me. They were trying to warn me. And I had already decided I wasn't going to listen. By the time I reached the road again, the sun was starting to dip lower.
but there was still enough light to see clearly. I passed the sign without stopping this time, drove straight in. The first thing I noticed was how narrow the road got. Branches leaning in from both sides like they'd been growing unchecked for years. My truck barely fit through in some places, leaves brushing against the windows, dragging along the sides with this dry, scraping sound. After a few minutes, the gravel smoothed out. Not paved, just worn down, like it had seen more traffic than it should have. That didn't make sense to me, because everything else out there said the opposite. No tire tracks, no footprints, nothing recent, just a road that looked used. I kept driving. About 5 minutes in, I saw the first structure, off to the right, partially hidden behind trees. It looked like an old cabin, or what was left of one. Roof sagging, wood darkened from years of weather. One side of it collapsed inward like it had just given up. I pulled over, grabbed my camera, stepped out, and right away something felt off. Not in a dramatic way, just quiet. Too quiet. No insects, no birds, nothing moving in the trees. Even the air felt still, like it wasn't carrying any sound at all. I remember standing there for a second, just listening, waiting to hear something normal. But it never came. I started walking toward the cabin, slowly at first, scanning the ground out of habit. Still no tracks. No sign anyone had been there in a long time. But when I reached the doorway, that's when it changed. The door itself was missing, just an open frame. And right at the entrance, there were marks on the wood. Not deep, not carved, more like repeated contact. Same spot over and over again. About the height of a hand, or something trying to get in. I stepped inside. The floor creaked under my weight, but even that sound felt contained, like it didn't carry beyond the walls. There wasn't much left inside. Broken furniture, dust, pieces of the ceiling scattered across the ground. But then I noticed something that didn't fit. Near the back wall, a backpack. Modern, clean, not covered in dust like everything else. I walked over to it slowly, knelt down, unzipped it. Inside, a water bottle, half full, still clear, and a phone. Screen cracked, but not dead. I picked it up, pressed the side button. The screen lit up. No signal. Battery still holding.
Last thing open was the camera app, and when I checked the gallery, the most recent video had been recorded that same day, just a few hours before I got there. I didn't play it right away. I just sat there for a second, holding the phone, trying to make sense of it. Because if someone had been here, recently, then where were they? I stepped back outside, looked around. Nothing. Just trees. Just silence. And that's when I realized something else. I hadn't heard a single sound since I got out of the truck, not one. No wind, no movement, nothing. It was like the entire place was just waiting. I didn't leave right away. Looking back, I probably should have. But finding something that recent, that out of place, it changes your thinking. It stops being about curiosity and starts feeling like you're close to figuring something out. I went back inside the cabin, closed the door frame behind me out of habit, even though there wasn't a door left to close. Sat down on what was left of a chair and finally played the video on the phone. At first, it looked normal.
Whoever recorded it was walking, camera shaking slightly with each step. Same road I came in on, same trees, same light. Late afternoon. They were talking too, but it was quiet. Hard to make out at first. Then I turned the volume up. "I think I found it." A man's voice, calm, focused, not scared. "I'm gonna go a little further in before it gets dark." The video kept going. Same direction I'd driven, same road narrowing. Then, about a minute in, he stopped walking. The camera tilted slightly, like he was looking at something off to the side. "You hear that?" I paused the video, listened. At first, nothing. Then I heard it. Faint, distant. A knock. Just one. I felt something shift in my chest when I heard it, because it sounded exactly like what I'd heard in the truck. Same rhythm, same weight behind it. I kept watching. The guy in the video didn't sound scared, just confused. Probably thinking the same thing I had, that it was something normal. He kept walking. Another knock. Closer this time. He stopped again. "Hello?" I actually said no out loud when I heard him say that, like it mattered, like I could change what had already happened. The video went quiet for a few seconds. Then the camera started moving again, faster this time. Not running, just quicker steps. Another knock, closer. Then another and another. Not loud, just steady, like something was keeping pace with him. He stopped again. The camera turned toward the trees. You couldn't see much, just trunks and shadows starting to stretch as the sun dropped lower. Then, a voice. "You weren't supposed to stay." The video cut right there. No static, no drop, just ended. I sat there for a while after that, longer than I probably should have, trying to process it. Because now it wasn't just stories anymore. It wasn't just warnings from people who didn't want to explain things. Someone had been here, hours before me. He heard the same thing, made the same mistake. And whatever happened after that wasn't on that phone. I stood up, walked back outside. The light had changed. Not completely dark yet, but getting there. That slow shift where everything starts losing detail. That's when I heard it, behind me, from somewhere deeper in the trees. A knock. Same as before. Not loud, not aggressive. Just one. I didn't turn around. I didn't answer. I just stood there, staring at the road, feeling that same weight settle in again. Because now I knew something for sure. It wasn't random. It wasn't in my head. And it wasn't far away. I didn't go looking for answers after that. Not right away. I just stood there for a few seconds, listening, waiting to hear it again. But nothing came. No second knock, no footsteps, no movement in the trees. Just that same empty quiet pressing in from all sides. I told myself I was overthinking it, that there had to be a reasonable explanation. But even as I thought that, I started walking back toward the cabin. Not fast, just drawn to it. Like I needed to check something I hadn't noticed before. When I stepped inside again, the air felt heavier. Not colder, just still. Like the space hadn't been disturbed in a long time, except for me. I looked around more carefully this time. Not just the obvious stuff, corners, floorboards, the edges of the walls. That's when I saw it. Near the back, half covered by debris, there was a piece of wood leaning against the wall. Looked like it had been broken off from something bigger. I moved it aside, and underneath, there were markings. Not carved deep, just scratched in, like someone didn't have the time or the tools to do it properly. At first, it didn't make sense, just lines and uneven shapes. But the longer I looked at it, the more it started to come together. Words, short, direct,
written by someone who wasn't trying to make it neat, just trying to make it clear. I wiped some of the dust away and read it properly.
Do not stay after dark. That part was underlined, hard, repeated. Below it, if you hear knocking, don't answer. I felt my grip tighten on the edge of the board, because now that warning had come up again. Different place, same exact words. There was more, messier this time, like whoever wrote it was rushing or panicking. If it calls you, don't respond. I swallowed, looked back toward the doorway without meaning to, then back at the writing, and the last part, barely readable, like the hand that wrote it was shaking. If you see someone, make sure it's them. I just stared at that line, longer than the others, because that one didn't explain anything. It just made everything worse. I stepped back slowly, trying to piece it together. Knocking, voices, not responding, and now, not trusting what you see. That's not the kind of thing people make up for no reason. That's the kind of thing you write down when you've already learned it the hard way. I took my phone out and snapped a picture of the wall. Didn't even think about it, just instinct, like I didn't trust myself to remember it exactly later. When I finished, I noticed something else, right below the last line. Faint, almost completely worn off. Another set of words, shorter, simpler. I leaned in closer, angling the light to catch it, and I could just make it out. It learns. I didn't say anything after that. Didn't try to explain it. Didn't try to connect the dots. Because at that point, I didn't want to be right. I stepped outside again. The light was lower now, that soft gray starting to take over the trees. And for the first time since I got there, I actually considered leaving, getting in the truck, driving back the way I came, forgetting the footage, forgetting the place, just going. But then I looked back at the cabin, at the road stretching deeper ahead, and I made the same mistake people always make in places like that. I told myself, I'll stay a little longer. I didn't notice the exact moment the sun dropped. There wasn't some dramatic shift, no sudden darkness. It was slower than that. The light just started thinning out, fading in a way that made everything look flatter, less detail in the trees, shadows stretching longer across the ground. But something else changed with it, something I felt before I fully understood it. The air. It got heavier, not colder, not warmer, just still in a way that didn't feel natural, like everything had settled at once. I was standing near the truck when I realized I still hadn't heard a single insect, not one. No crickets, no distant birds, nothing moving through the leaves. Just silence, and my own footsteps when I shifted my weight. That's when I decided to head back. Not because I was scared, at least that's what I told myself, but because I'd seen enough to come back another time, earlier in the day. I opened the truck door, sat down, closed it behind me, and for a second, everything felt normal again, familiar, contained. I reached for the keys, and that's when I heard it, from somewhere behind the truck. A knock, same as before. One. I stopped moving, listened. Nothing followed, no second sound, no footsteps, just that single knock, like it was waiting. I didn't turn around. I remembered what was written inside the cabin. If you hear knocking, don't answer. I stayed still, hand hovering near the ignition, trying to decide whether to start the engine or just wait it out. A few seconds passed. Then I heard something else. Footsteps. Slow, moving across the gravel, circling again. Same pattern as before. Back of the truck, then along the side. Closer. I kept my eyes forward, didn't check the mirrors,
didn't move. The steps stopped right outside my door, so close I could hear the shift in weight on the ground. Then, a voice. "Hey." It wasn't the same voice from the video. This one was softer, more familiar. And that's what made it worse, because for a second, I thought I recognized it. "Hey, you still in there?" I felt my chest tighten, because it sounded like someone I knew, someone I hadn't thought about in years. The tone, the rhythm, everything about it felt right. Except for one thing. They shouldn't have been there. There was no way they could be out here, not in this place, not at this time. The voice came again, closer, right outside the window. "You don't have to ignore me." I shut my eyes for a second, tried to steady my breathing, because now the rule made sense. If it calls you, don't respond. I stayed quiet, didn't react, didn't even shift in my seat. A few seconds passed. Then the voice changed, subtly, still familiar, but off in a way that was hard to explain, like it was trying to adjust itself. "Come on, I know you can hear me." I opened my eyes, kept staring straight ahead, because I knew if I turned and looked, I might see something I couldn't unsee. The handle on the door moved, just slightly, a small test, like something checking if it was locked.
I gripped the steering wheel tighter, and that's when it hit me. It wasn't just calling out. It was trying to figure out what worked, what would get a response, what would make me react. It wasn't random. It was learning. The voice stopped. The footsteps moved away, slowly this time. No rush, no panic. Just stepping back into the trees like it had all the time in the world. And I sat there, still, silent, realizing something I hadn't fully accepted until that moment. It wasn't trying to scare me. It was trying to understand me. I didn't wait any longer after that. The second I couldn't hear the footsteps anymore, I turned the key. The engine started up like nothing was wrong. No hesitation, no delay. For a brief moment, that almost calmed me down. Like maybe I'd built it up in my head more than I should have. I put the truck in reverse, backed out slowly, kept my eyes forward the entire time. Didn't check behind me, didn't look toward the trees, just focused on getting back to the road I came from. I turned around and started driving. Same path, same narrow stretch between the trees. Branches brushing against the sides again. Only now, it sounded louder, sharper, like every little noise had been turned up. I kept going. Didn't speed, didn't panic. Just steady driving, trying to keep everything controlled. A few minutes passed. Then I saw something ahead. At first, I thought it was just a bend in the road, but as I got closer, I felt my grip tighten on the wheel. Because it wasn't a bend. It was the cabin, the same one I had just left, right there on the right side of the road, exactly where it had been before. I slowed down, stared at it as I passed. Same broken roof, same collapsed wall, same empty doorway. I kept driving, didn't stop. Told myself I must have taken a wrong turn somewhere, even though I hadn't seen a single split in the road, not one. I drove another few minutes, same direction, same speed. And then, I saw it again. The cabin. Same position, same details, like I had never left. I felt something drop in my chest when I realized what that meant. I wasn't going the wrong way. The road wasn't leading anywhere else. It was bringing me back. I stopped the truck this time, sat there, engine running, staring straight ahead, trying to think, trying to figure out what I missed. There were no side roads, no alternate paths, nothing to explain it. I checked my phone. No signal. GPS still active, but the map wasn't updating. Just stuck on the same stretch like I hadn't moved at all. I looked up again, and that's when I noticed something new. The light. It hadn't gotten darker, not really. It was just stuck. That same dim gray tone, like the sun had stopped moving. I stepped out of the truck, slowly this time, not rushing, just needing to confirm it. I walked a few steps forward, turned around. The cabin was behind me, same distance as before, unchanged. I took a few more steps, then stopped, because from somewhere in the trees, I heard it again. A knock, closer than before. Not behind me this time, in front, on the other side of the road. I turned my head slightly, not fully, just enough to listen. Another knock, then footsteps, moving parallel to me, keeping pace. I didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, feeling that same realization settle in again, only heavier this time. Leaving wasn't going to be simple, not anymore. The road wasn't broken. It was working exactly the way it was supposed to, keeping me there. I didn't get back in the truck right away. Part of me knew I should have, locked the doors, stayed inside, waited it out. But standing there, hearing it move alongside me, it did something to my head. It made me want to see it, not out of courage, just needing to know what I was dealing with. The footsteps kept pace, same distance, not getting closer, not falling behind, like it was matching me step for step. I started walking slowly along the road, didn't look directly into the trees, just kept my eyes forward, letting the sound guide me. Another step, another. Gravel shifting under my boots. And beside me, through the trees, that same rhythm, perfectly timed. I stopped. The footsteps stopped too. That was enough. That was all I needed to know. I turned my head, slowly, carefully, just enough to see through the gaps in the trees. At first, nothing, just trunks, shadows, that same dim light hanging in the air. Then, movement. Farther back, something shifting between the trees. I narrowed my eyes, trying to focus on it. And that's when it stepped forward. Not fully out into the open, just enough. Enough for me to see the shape. It looked like a person, standing upright, same height as me, maybe a little taller. But the way it held itself, that's what made my chest tighten. It wasn't relaxed. It wasn't natural. It stood too still, too straight. Like it was holding a position it had learned, not one it was used to. I didn't say anything, didn't move, just stared.
And then it took a step forward, slow, measured, and I saw its face, or at least what should have been a face. The features were there, eyes, mouth, shape, but they didn't sit right, like they were slightly off, just enough that your brain couldn't settle on it. And then something hit me, hard, because I recognized it. Not completely, not like seeing someone you know well, but enough to connect it. It looked like the man from the video, the one whose phone I found, same build, same general features, but changed. Not injured, not damaged, just wrong. Like something had tried to copy him from memory and hadn't gotten it perfect. We stood there for a few seconds, neither of us moving. Then it tilted its head slightly, watching me, studying. And when it spoke, my stomach dropped, because it used his voice. "You made it in."
Same tone from the video, same calm delivery. But now it was standing in front of me. I took a step back without thinking. It didn't follow, just watched. Then it smiled. Not wide, not exaggerated, just enough to show it understood what that expression was supposed to mean. That was it. That was the moment everything in me said, "Get back to the truck." I turned, walked fast at first, then faster. Didn't run, not yet. I could feel it watching me the entire time, but it didn't chase, didn't call out again, just stayed there, letting me go, like it didn't need to rush, like it already knew something I didn't. I got back inside the truck, locked the doors immediately, started the engine, hands shaking now, couldn't control it anymore. I looked in the rearview mirror, and for a second, I saw it. Standing at the edge of the road, still, watching. Then it stepped back into the trees and disappeared. I stared at that spot longer than I should have, waiting for it to come back out. But it didn't. And that should have been a relief. But it wasn't. Because now I understood something I hadn't fully accepted before. The people who stayed out there, they didn't just vanish. Some of them were still there. I couldn't sleep that night. Not really. Not properly. I sat in the truck, parked on the edge of that road, listening to the forest settle around me. Or at least, I tried to. Because even in the quiet, I could feel it. Presence, watching, waiting. I kept thinking about the man in the video, the one I'd found, the phone, the backpack, the knocking. And slowly, I started to piece it together. Not logically, not with evidence, but instinctively. He hadn't disappeared. Not really. The knocking, the voice, the figure in the trees. It wasn't just him. It was someone who looked like him. Not perfect, not exactly right, but close enough that at first glance, you'd believe it. I remembered the words scratched into the cabin wall. If you see someone, make sure it's them. That wasn't a warning about safety. It was a rule about survival. Because the place, it doesn't take people. It learns them, copies them, studies them. And if you stay too long after dark, it can step into their place, their voice, their face, their mannerisms, all of it. I thought about the locals at the gas station. 2 people, same warning, no story. They weren't scared of the forest. They were scared of what comes back from it. Not the thing in the trees, but what it can make of you. I stared at the cabin again, the one I'd passed over and over, and the thought hit me. It wasn't trying to hurt me, not at first. It just wanted to study me, to see if I was predictable, to see how I'd respond, to decide if I could be replaced. I didn't move, didn't breathe, just sat there, trying to convince myself I could leave. But even as I gripped the wheel, even as I stared at the road ahead, I realized something that made my stomach drop. Somewhere out there, the people who stayed too long weren't gone. They were still there, and they weren't themselves anymore. I thought I understood what was happening. I didn't. I started driving, slowly at first, trying to put distance between me and that stretch of road. But the trees, the shadows, the quiet, it all stayed the same. And then I saw movement ahead. At first, I thought it was another figure in the road, but as I got closer, I froze. Because it wasn't another person. It was me. Or at least something that looked exactly like me. Same height, same jacket, same hesitation in the stance. And then it raised its hand. Not aggressively, not threatening, just mirroring mine. My chest tightened. I slammed on the brakes, engine roaring, heart hammering. I couldn't process it at first. I had to blink, rub my eyes. Maybe it was a trick of the light. But it wasn't. It spoke.
My voice. My words. You shouldn't have stayed. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I was frozen, because in that moment, I realized the truth. This place doesn't just scare people away. It doesn't even kill them. It replaces them, takes everything about you, your voice, your face, your memory, and leaves you trapped.
Still here, watching, learning, waiting. I stepped back from the truck, and that's when I heard another knock, closer this time, from the trees on the side, and then another voice, familiar, but wrong. You made it in. I turned slowly, trying to see where it came from, and I realized the road wasn't empty. Every single person who had disappeared here, they were still here, but not themselves anymore. Copies, shadows, watching, studying, and somewhere deep down, I knew, if I didn't leave soon, I would be next. I didn't run, not at first. I couldn't. I just sat there, gripping the wheel, staring at the road, watching the shadows shift through the trees. The truck was still running, the engine humming. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but my mind, it kept circling back to the copies, to the people I'd seen, or thought I had seen. And then I realized something else. I hadn't heard a single knock in a few minutes, not behind me, not beside me, not in the trees. I looked around, and I thought I was safe. But then I heard it, faint, almost too soft to notice. A voice, my voice, saying my own name, from somewhere I couldn't place. I sat frozen, eyes scanning the road. Nothing. Then I glanced in the rearview mirror. The road behind me looked empty, but the feeling, the presence, it stayed. And I knew the night wasn't over. Somehow, it never is. You see, people say no one stays after dark. But the truth? Some of them do. You just don't recognize them anymore. And for the first time in my life, I understood why everyone in those towns whispers about this place, why they warn strangers. Because it's not about being caught, it's about being replaced. If you've ever heard stories like this, or know someone who's had a close encounter in the woods, let me know in the comments. And if you want more true Appalachian horror that people rarely talk about, hit subscribe now. I'll be sharing more stories like this, but only for those brave enough to stay after dark.